The Space Shuttle Discovery was the oldest and most accomplished orbiter until its service ended in 2011. Since then, it's been preserved at the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum. In April, Texas Senators John Cornyn and Ted Cruz introduced the Bring the Space Shuttle Home Act, which aimed to move the shuttle from the Smithsonian to Space Center Houston. This effort was included in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill as a provision that issued $85 million to move the shuttle from Virginia to Texas. And joining us now to tell us more about this is Robert Pearlman, the editor of collectSPACE. Robert, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And if you have a question for Robert, you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. You know, Robert, I've got to start. Why do you think moving the Discovery Shuttle to Houston was championed so strongly and so fiercely by Texas Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn?
Well, it's to be honest, it's not quite clear. It sort of came out of left field. There was an opportunity to move the space shuttles to the museums back in 2012. There was a process by which the different museums around the country could propose their best idea about how to display a space shuttle, demonstrate they had the funding to bring the space shuttle to their facility. That went through a panel discussion and a ranking, and there were museums that were selected and there were museums that were not. And then that seemed to be the end of it. The shuttles went on display. Millions of people have seen them since. And then in April, this bill popped up that said, let's move Discovery to Houston. And it sort of caught everyone off guard. I think it is, it shows Houston pride that we'd love to have a real space shuttle here. Johnson Space Center was the home, or it still is the home of the astronauts, home of mission control. Every one of the 135 missions that the space shuttle flew, including the 39 flown by Discovery, was monitored from here, was trained from here, and so it certainly has a history with the space shuttle program, but Space Center Houston, which is where the senators want to place the shuttle, already has a very impressive space shuttle display. If you've not been to it, it has a mock space shuttle sitting on top of the real 747 that delivered the space shuttles back and forth across the country and then to their museums.
Yeah. You talk about, Celeste mentioned it in the intro, we were just talking about the $85 million, but some estimate it's really $300 million it would cost to make this move. What is your understanding of what the actual cost could be? And if it is that much more, already people are worried about that $85 million. What happens if it is closer to $300 million?
So the language in the bill actually sets aside $5 million for the move and the remainder for the building of a facility to display it, although it allows for more of the display money to be used for the move if they run over budget. But as you say, the Smithsonian itself has said that their estimates would be that it would cost $200 to $300 million to move Space Shuttle Discovery to Virginia. And other estimates have put it even higher, upwards to $1 billion. And part of the problem is that what we just mentioned, the 747 that flew the space shuttles across the country are retired. The one here in Houston's on display. The other one sitting for the past decade in an air park out in California. It would have to be totally recertified, given new engines. Even then, it's not clear if it could be made flight worthy.
Well, Robert, that's my question. I read your article in collectSPACE. There's no practical way to do this.
So the way that they're proposing is putting it on a barge,
okay,
and
during
barging
hurricane
it to
season.
Houston. But there isn't a large enough closed-in barge to put the space shuttle into. You don't want to take apart the space shuttle because Discovery was maintained in as close to as flown condition as possible. If you want to remove the wings or the tail in order to fit it into a barge, you'd be ripping apart the tiles and blankets that give it part of its historic nature, and you wouldn't be able to replace those with anything but replicas. And there's also the issue that to get from the Udvar Hazy annex of the National Air and Space Museum in Virginia to the closest waterway that could take the barge would be anywhere between 30 and 100 miles of a road trip. Just to put that into perspective, California received Space Shuttle Endeavour, had to take it from LAX out to the California Science Center. That was a 12-mile move. It was supposed to take 2 days. It took 3 full days, and it cost $12 million.
But even before we start moving it, Robert, aren't there some major legal issues here? Like, for example, who exactly owns the shuttle?
Exactly. Well, we should start off with saying that while the original act said Space Shuttle Discovery, the big beautiful bill that it was the language put into doesn't allow for specific awards of money. So they had to make it very generic. So it just became a space vehicle that carried astronauts into space has to be moved to a NASA center that took part in the Commercial Crew Program and then placed into a nonprofit within the municipality of that center. So nowhere does it mention Space Shuttle Discovery or the Smithsonian. So there are 4 remaining space shuttles. Endeavour belongs to the California Science Center. Title was transferred over. Enterprise didn't carry people into space. It was a test vehicle. It's in New York, so it doesn't even qualify under the bill. Space Shuttle Atlantis is on display in Florida at NASA's own visitor center. It still belongs to NASA. And then there's Space Shuttle Discovery, which has been at the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian contends that the items in their collection belong to the Smithsonian. They are they do receive federally funded monies to operate, but they are not part of the government. They're not part of any of the 3 branches of the government. So they consider themselves an independent institution. They have a title document that says that they own Discovery outright, and they're not prepared to give it up.
Well, I don't blame them. And again, if there's a chance that you're going to hurt the Discovery, which it sounds like from everything I read, there's no practical way to move it by land, and then there's no practical way to move it by water, and you can't move it by air. So unless you're going to blink it somehow, it's just simply not going to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, even if we were to have everything line up and you get it into the water safely onto a barge, you still have the risk of entering the Gulf of Mexico during a hurricane. You can't plan these things out in advance, but even just a bad storm. And then if you take it out on an open air barge, as someone proposed, and not a closed one, then you also take the real, not even risk, the guarantee that it will be permanently damaged by the exposure to saltwater air.
So do you think, though, Cornyn and Cruz understood all of this and signing on to this bill just as rah-rah, it sounds like a great idea, or did they believe practically it could happen?
Good question.
Yeah. Photo op.
I've tried to, as someone who's been covering the story since it was announced, I've tried to get interviews with both of them and been turned away. I did take part in a press conference with Cornyn and asked him about it a little bit. I think their interest is less the logistics and more this would be good for Houston. And unfortunately the logistics are large.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just obviously there seems to be a lot of roadblocks here, but in President Trump's big beautiful bill, he did add $9.9 billion to NASA's budget. How much of those funds do you think could be allocated? I know that's in question, but also, do you think that what will be good for Houston if we don't necessarily get this Discovery shuttle?
So, of that 9.9 billion, only the 85 million could be applied to the space shuttle. It caps it there. There's supposedly a fund here in Texas that has been willing to put up some additional money, but the details on that are few. If you look at other vehicles that NASA owns that could fulfill the purpose of this bill and end up with something coming to Houston, you could potentially award Space Center Houston Artemis 2, which is going to be the capsule that launches in February, or as soon as February, no later than April, to take the first humans back to the moon.
So that's the
loop
one
around
we
the moon
want.
And come back.
The Artemis 2. That's right.
Sounds like a great
Robert,
idea.
Thank you so much. We are speaking with Robert Pearlman, the editor of collectSPACE, about the Space Shuttle Discovery. Thanks, Robert, for joining us today.
My pleasure.